Hi, welcome to the latest in the video series on Irish ancestors. Today, I'm going to be talking about the wonderful website irishgenealogy.ie. I'm going to be giving it a 2.9 cheers out of 3. It's a wonderful website. It has made a huge difference to everybody doing research on Irish ancestors. But there are some peculiarities about it. There are some peculiarities about everything. What I'm going to talk about are the peculiarities. So let's go to the website and jump off from there. Okay, here we are at the home site. And just to provide a link, I'm going to go to a general article on what Irish records are online, General Register Office Records. Okay. And there we go, irishgenealogy.ie. Now, one of the reasons for doing a talk about irishgenealogy.ie today is because they've just added another year of records to their holdings. The idea is that birth records older than 100 years, marriage records older than 75 years, and birth records older than 50 years should all be available here. So obviously, as the years go by, they should be adding another year. They haven't always done it punctually, but it seems to me at this point there is a process. It's on some public servant's calendar somewhere, and it pops up in January every year at another year, so it's working. So they come up to 1921 for births, up to 1946 for marriages, and 1971, very recent to my mind, but for deaths. The one peculiarity about all of that is that they don't have the record images of deaths from 1864 to 1870. And Grenham's fifth commandment of Irish genealogy dictates that your ancestor died sometime between 1864 and 1870. But they will get there in the fullness of time. I just hope it's on some public servant's calendar somewhere. Okay, what I want to do is search the civil records and show you some of the peculiarities of it. So I'm going to search for O'Brien. And because they've added the extra year, and I'm going to search from 1900 to 1921. There's a particular reason for picking 1900 as the start date. I'll come back to that later on in the talk. And I'm just going to search for the whole shooting match. I have to demonstrate I'm not a robot. I have to pretend I'm giving them my name. And in we go. Okay. Now you can see there's 122,220 records in total. As you might expect, there are plenty of O'Briens. And you might also expect, because it searches on variants by default, that it's picking up all the variants as well. I've gone through this and done some screenshots of this. So let me go to the screenshots now. So this is what we've just seen. 122,000 for O'Brien, that's O''B. For Brian, which is one of the biggest, here you have 123,148. Okay, you can see there is a difference. There are more records here than there are for O''Brian. Okay, so something is not being picked up. And to add the cherry on top, if you search for O'Brien without the apostrophe, you get another number as well. Okay, the differences are not huge. The numbers are not huge in the great scheme of things. There's about 1,000 out of 120-something thousand. So, but again, Grenham's 8th commandment of Irish genealogy dictates that your ancestors are amongst those 1,000. It specifically affects surnames starting with O and also surnames starting with Mac. So Mac, this is MacMahon, 1900 to 1921, and you have 20,078 total. MacMahon, spelled M-A-C, the most obvious variant, you have a different number. Okay, you have 20,078 for the MC, 19,887 for the MAC. So these are variants of each other. The numbers should be identical. They should be picking up the same records. And what about Mac Mahan with a space? MC space Mahan, 19,740. So 19,887, 20,078. Okay, you have, this is particularly affects O's and Macs, and it particularly affects records after 1900. The reason, I think, is that there was an earlier attempt to transcribe the records in the 1980s, at a time when having an apostrophe in a record was a mortal sin and would cause your computer to have a nervous breakdown and explode and melt on the floor. So they left the apostrophes out in lots of cases and transcribed O apostrophe Brian as O'Brien. And when they came back and incorporated those records into Irish genealogy, they did various things to try and make them variants of each other, but they didn't always work. So the upshot is, if you're going to be using Irish genealogy, if you're going to be searching for a surname that has an O or a Mac in it, search on all variants and all versions of the surname. Don't trust the surname variants to find what you're looking for. Okay, that's one thing. And one interesting thing that I just noticed looking at this page now is that for some reason we seem to have a link called Z Research there. Have we been hacked by the Russian military? They're going a long way out of their way to make their point, if they are. Anyway, I digress. I always digress. Let me digress about my digressions. Anyway, let me go into the more search options end of the site and show you. Well, first of all, the same thing happens. Okay, if you put in O'Brien here, you won't get the same number as O apostrophe Brian or O space Brian or O no space Brian, and the same with the Macs. So be careful. What I wanted to do here is demonstrate another peculiarity of the site. So let me go to my own site first of all and just show you the surname Aubrey, A-U-B or E-Y, Aubrey. Okay, there are Aubrey births, 1864 to 1913, and a variant is Aubrey, and there's Aubrey births. So on the website, johngrenham.com, Aubrey and Aubrey, they're pretty obvious variants of each other. They're there. If you search on Irish genealogy, you get Aubrey, B-O-R-E-Y. You get 1 to 18. All the deaths and all the marriages, but you don't get any Aubreys. You change the surname to Aubrey, and I'm going to do it the quick and dirty way. Aubrey. Okay, you have all the Aubreys. So the surname variants are not working for Aubrey and A-U-B-R-E-Y and O-B-R-E-Y. Why is that? Because the version of the surnames table that they're using is about 10 years old. It was it was my surnames table. They licensed it from me, and it hasn't been updated since. Whereas I've been updating, furiously for the last 10 years. So again, the surnames variance table here is not perfect. You need to be careful using it. Okay, let's go back to this again. I want to show you one other peculiarity. All those peculiar Grenhams. No, I want to Grenham, Dignan, I-G-N-A-N. Okay, so I'm looking for the marriage of anybody named Grenham who married anybody called Dignan. And I search, and there we are. There's my grandfather and my grandmother getting married in 1920. What happens if I reverse them? If I put Dignan in here and Grenham in here, I should get the same result, shouldn't I? Logically, but I don't. Okay. Why? Okay, the only reason I can think of is that the variants are not being applied to one side of the search. In other words, you get variance for Grenham, but you don't get variance for Dignam. If you put Grenham in the top, you get variance for this, but you don't get variance for this. Okay, whatever the reason, the moral of the story is always reverse your marriage searches. Search on both surnames. Okay, it's as a final demonstration of something that can be peculiar. Let's have a look at births. Okay, say I want to find all Dignams whose mother's surname was Kelly. Well, first of all, if I don't tick this little box, I'm going to search them all. So, okay, I want to find every Dignam whose mother's name was Kelly between 1864 and 1880, we'll say. Search. None. What? That's not possible, surely. Let's try it from 1900 to 1921. 21. You have 22 of them. The thing is, the mother's surnames are included in the database only from 1899 on. So if you include a mother's surname before that year, you won't find anything. Again, the reason for this is this earlier attempt at a transcription in the 1980s, which took out the apostrophes, took out all the middle forenames as well, and included the mother's maiden name. It was done to facilitate the production of social welfare, dole, passports, probates. So the mother's name was handy for the internally in the office for them finding the record. So they included the mother's name. But they didn't go before 1900 because it was the 1980s and they didn't need to go before 1900 for the queries that they were getting. So those are incorporated into the database and the peculiarities are there. So just finally, before I leave the site and finish the video, I'd like to say that again and again and again, every time I use the site, I get a little thrill of delight. You have no idea of how much of a joy it is to have access to these records after 20 years of fishing through printed indexes and buying printouts for the wrong people over and over and over again, and knowing behind the counter that they had a database that they could look things up in 2 seconds, but we couldn't get at it. So the relief and the joy are there. So as I say, 2.9 cheers for Irish genealogy. Thanks, I hope you've enjoyed. Till the next time.